Hi there, welcome to Lordrick's Room. My name is Lordrick. For today's supplemental essay, I want to talk about the kinds of prompts that ask you to make a list of things. Around last year, when I was scrambling to finish my applications, this type of essay presented a number of unique challenges since the formatting of these lists was so different from how I approached writing all of my other essays. When it comes to this type of prompt, a school could be asking for a list of really any sort of category. Books you've read, classes you've enjoyed, college YouTubers you watch. I'll be focusing on the former today because that's what I have the most experience with. The direction you choose to take and what you may want to show your application readers may differ depending on what you're being asked to list. So what I'll be sharing is going to be more geared toward, I suppose you could put it all under a label of media consumption. So things like books you've read, stuff you've listened to, shows and movies you've watched, and so on. I imagine other schools may ask for lists of a number of different kinds of things. I know this year's Wake Forest application asks you to make a top 10 list where you decide what the theme is for yourself. I'm not as familiar with making those kinds of lists since I never had to write them myself, but hopefully the advice I give y'all today can apply to list making in general. As an aside, if I were applying to Wake Forest, I definitely would have done my list on my top 10 inspirational scenes in anime. If I was an anime YouTuber, I would have loved to make a video on that. But honestly, this type of prompt is actually pretty uncommon in the first place, at least in my experience. I only ever encountered it in my Columbia application, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll be basing what I say off of my experience writing for those prompts. Again, experience is purely anecdotal, and I'm really not qualified to be giving advice on college applications, yet here I am. So, as always, proceed with caution. Alright, let's read some essays. Alright, as mentioned, I'll be reading some of my Columbia essays for y'all. For one prompt, they asked me to list the titles of the required readings from courses during the school year or summer that you enjoyed most in the past year. And I wrote, A People's History of the United States, Howard Zinn, Interpreter of Maladies, Jhumpa Lahiri, 50 Psychology Classics, Tom Butler Bowden, Invictus, William Ernest Henley, Canterbury Tales, Chaucer, Sailing to Byzantium and The Second Coming, William Butler Yeats, Quite Frankly, Mark Halliday, Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, The Ballot or the Bullet, Malcolm X, Hamlet, Shakespeare, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, James Joyce, The Importance of Being Earnest, Oscar Wilde, Korean Grammar in Use Beginning, Various, Welcome to Korean, Nisley Y, Native American Creation Stories, Various, The Dream of a Ridiculous Man, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Tales of Amadou Kumba, Virago Diop, A Scandal in Bohemia, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Goodbye to Berlin, Christopher Isherwood, Remembering America, A Voice from the 60s, Richard Goodwin, The Fall of the House of Usher, Edgar Allan Poe, Rip Van Winkle, Washington Irving, Jabberwocky, Lewis Carroll. And then for the other prompt, Columbia asked me to list the titles of the books you read for pleasure that you enjoyed most in the past year. And I wrote, The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Blue Bear, Walter Moores, Eleanor and Park, Rainbow Rowell, The Bride Test, Helen Hoang, The Kiss Quotient, Helen Hoang, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F, Mark Manson, Comparative Grammar of Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and French, Mikhail Petruin, currently reading, The Prince, Niccolo Machiavelli, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, Neil deGrasse Tyson, What If, Randall Munroe, This Is Not a T-Shirt, Bobby Hundreds, The 4-Hour Workweek, Timothy Ferriss, We Were 8 Years in Power, Ta-Nehisi Coates, But What If We're Wrong, Chuck Klosterman, Goodbye Things, Fumio Sasaki, Magnus Chase, The Hammer of Thor, Rick Riordan, The Art of War, Sun Tzu, The Power of Kindness, Piero Ferrucci, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde, Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari, Blink, Malcolm Gladwell, So You Want to Talk About Race, Ijeoma Oluo, A Tale for the Time Being, Ruth Ozeki, My Phone Diary, me. I hope you guys got some good reading recommendations from that. So, let's talk about these lists. But first, I just shared a few of my Columbia list type essays, but there are actually a couple more list prompts that Columbia has. So if you're interested in what I had for those other essays, you can feel free to check out a video on my main channel dedicated to going over all my Columbia essays. I'll put a link to that in the description below, as well as in one of the corners above me. I'm still not really sure which corner it's in. It'll be in one of them. So what is up with schools asking for lists? You know, I don't think they're looking for new books to read or movies to watch. Then why are they asking for a list? For this kind of list in particular, and by that I mean lists of books, movies, and so on that you've enjoyed, the school, which in this case is Columbia, is trying to get a better glimpse at the type of person you are. And this is because the type of media that a person enjoys can be really telling about their character and personality. For example, if a person writes that some of their favorite books are The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Stranger in a Strange Land, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, that can definitely clue an admissions reader into the applicant's interests, which in this case may be more STEM oriented. And as another example, if an applicant wrote that their favorite books included the ReZero light novel and the Horimiya manga, and they enjoy watching the Lordric Valsota YouTube channel, what kind of person would the admissions reader think that the applicant is? A very cool person, I would hope. Since this video has already become somewhat Columbia focused, I'll talk a bit more about their application prompts in particular for a second. When I applied last year, their prompts asked me to list the things that I had enjoyed in the past year. I've heard from some other people that they had trouble coming up with enough items to list so that they could get close to the word limit. Fortunately, I happened to read a lot of books that year for secret reasons, so I didn't really have any problem filling up the word count. Of course, it isn't a requirement that you hit the word limit for your essays, but I personally prefer to use up all my words. And since I never really had essays where I didn't get very close to the word count, I can't really advise one way or another because I have a pretty biased data set. But anyway, maybe because Columbia realized that people were having trouble with these lists, they changed the prompts this year so that you could include things you've read or watched or whatever from any point during high school or secondary school for you international students. Hopefully this gives you plenty of material to work with so that reaching the word count isn't as much of a problem anymore. At that point, it's really just about curating your list with your top choices. But at the same time, it's important that your lists stay true to who you are. I don't think there's really a way for schools to see if you actually enjoyed the books you listed, or if you even read them in the first place. Still, as with any other part of your application, honesty is the best policy. When you're figuring out what to put on your list, I think it's better to put things there for yourself rather than for your application. A good example of this is in the prompt that asks for books you've read for school that you've enjoyed. Maybe for your class, you've had to read The Metamorphosis or A Brief History of Time, or maybe you didn't even read them at all. But you may think it'll look good for your application if you have them on your list. In my application, I listed my psychology textbook as an assigned reading that I enjoyed because I did enjoy reading about psychology. But at the same time, I would never ever be caught putting my physics textbook on my list. Maybe I could have seemed smarter or more intellectual if I had it on there, but that wouldn't be true to who I am. I've heard that admissions officers are good at seeing through this kind of forced intellectualism, not just in this essay, but also throughout your application as a whole. If you're trying to be someone you're clearly not, they can tell. Maybe there is a super intellectual applicant out there that does in fact like reading The Metamorphosis, A Brief History of Time, or any other highbrow literature. But if that's not you, don't force it to be. If you liked reading Dr. Seuss books when you learned about allegories in English class, go for it. Write it down. In the first place, I wouldn't think that admissions officers really scrutinize over every item on your lists. As you may know, readers may spend only a few minutes reading your application before actually making a decision. And it's not like there's a standardized list of books that students read, so admissions officers aren't going to be looking for specific books or whatever on your lists. I imagine that these prompts are really the place to show your personality and creativity and just have fun with it. Although it was a really stressful time filling out all my applications, I really did enjoy thinking back to all the books I had read and the movies I had watched and so on. I know y'all are stressed, trust me, I've been there, but if possible, try to have a bit of fun with it. So that about does it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed and learned something from today. If you have any book recommendations or any other kind of recommendations you'd like to give, I am all ears. And if there's nothing else, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.